Hello and welcome back to the Lore Raider. The Metroid universe has no shortage of powerful characters. On this channel, we've directly covered some big names, like the ex-parasites from Metroid Fusion and Dread, the main protagonist Samus Aran, as well as her dark doppelganger Dark Samus. However, a character I don't actually see discussed in Metroid community talks about power scaling, or on this own channel, is the Super Metroid, also known as Baby. And in my opinion, this is a shame, because from its start as an Infant Metroid to its death at the end of Super Metroid, the Super Metroid is, in my opinion, undoubtedly having the fastest growth rate of any Metroid character. So without further ado, let's look into it. So how strong is Baby as a newborn infant? Most people would be quick to jump to claiming it's featless, but Infant Metroids are actually surprisingly cracked. It is stated in the original Metroid 2 guidebook that rumors of Federation soldiers going missing on SR-388 was, quote, enough to seize the entire galaxy in fear. And for good reason, as it goes on to explain, even one Metroid is enough to wipe out an entire planetary civilization. Now, in the picture, it does show an Alpha Metroid, however, we know that they are referring to Infant Metroids at this time, as shown in both the original Metroid 1, the Zero Mission remake, and the Metroid prequel manga. The Federation is only aware of Infant Metroids and are making a statement based off of that. We even get to see this statement played out in the Metroid manga, as we see directly an entire advanced planetary civilization wiped out by a Metroid without any Metroid casualties. All this combined should make a single Metroid a life-wiping level threat, and as we know, Infant SR-388 Metroids are impervious to typical forms of damage if unfrozen, meaning they should be above weapons you'd expect to see in an armed, defended, civilized planet, like the country-busting Dominion missile, which we see, indeed true to its description, busts an entire country. So at minimum, you have a country to a tops multi-continental Infant Metroid threat. That said, this particular Baby Metroid is a little more special than that, as at the end of Samus Returns, we see it and Samus fend off Proteus Ridley. Now, what always stood out to me was that at several points in the fight, it was clear to me that Ridley was winning the fight, and even had Samus pinned to the ground at one point at his mercy, indicating that Samus was about to lose the fight. Further evidence, as an hour later in Super Metroid, a weakened, de-armored Ridley, who had just got his ass kicked, defeats a depowered Samus aboard the Ceres space colony. The Baby is able to not only keep pace with their movements, but also their combat speed, which, as we discussed in my video about ghost scaling in Metroid, because they are the MVPs in Metroid, this would make him immeasurable speed. Whilst his speed scaling is definitive and less arguable, what's less definitive is his AP and durability scaling. The Baby is able to several times in the fight tag Ridley and notably change his skin color, which is typically a sign of decreasing vitality in Metroid. For example, we see this later in Super Metroid with Mother Brain, but we'll get to her later. This means the Baby is not only harming Ridley, but doing so with unusual quickness. Now, Ridley is forced to hold back here and therefore never actually hits the Metroid, so we're unclear on if the Baby could take an attack from him or Samus. However, if you're generous, you could easily walk away with the Baby being well above its normal kind, at immeasurable speed and as high as multiversal, as we discussed how in previous Metroid videos, how the Metroid universe gets to that level many times before. Pretty impressive. I don't think people appreciate how fast everyone moves in Super Metroid. Ridley only leaves the space colony a few minutes before Samus, and given Samus' ship can fly to other galaxies in mere seconds, that means in the seconds it took for Samus to arrive on planet Zebes, the space pirates successfully set up a cloning lab on Meridia, cloned the Metroid into the failed Metroids, set up the monitoring system from the Metroids in the wrecked ship, successfully cloned actual Metroids, and turn the Metroid into the Super Metroid, all in a few seconds. Anyway, that aside, the Samus Aran that we play as in Super Metroid is massively stronger than she was at the end of Metroid 2. We know this because she actually gets rage gems from seeing even common pirates, as we've seen the Metroid manga, and these amps give her a 5 times boost in her power. Between her homeworld being desecrated again, seeing a bunch of pirates and pirate leaders, and the amps from her suits naturally she would be getting over time, she blows her previous self out of the water, evidenced by how Samus does take the lead over Ridley again and puts an end to him at the end of the game, only to get completely annihilated by the Super Metroid, whose only amp was being shot full of beta rays. Even Samus's Ice Beam was no match for the Super Metroid. And on top of that already incredible showcase, overpowering Samus's no mean feat, we get a better idea of how much more powerful the Super Metroid is, as at the end of the game, Samus Aran gets her ass kicked by second form Mother Brain, and the Super Metroid, possibly getting a motivation amp after realizing Samus is its mother, charges in and tanks Mother Brain's strongest attack, the Hyper Beam, and manages to pretty much kill her. The Super Metroid only dies here because it actively nerfs itself by giving its energy to a nearly dead Samus and allowing itself to take a ton of damage in the process. But this doesn't stop the Super Metroid from easily being the galaxy's strongest, unless you really think Ravenbeak's gap above Samus is so high that he could also manhandle this Mother Brain and then manhandle the Super Metroid, because both of those are 2 huge gaps stacked on one another. Now, you would think that this would be the end of Super Metroid's scaling, but we have one more thing to talk about. Yes, it is worth remembering that the unusually powerful Omega Metroid at the end of Fusion is made from the same DNA as the baby, and therefore we can use it as a sort of gauge of how much more powerful the baby would have been had it grown up. This Metroid one-shots End of Fusion Samus. This is really impressive when you remember that Samus in Fusion is at least 8 years older than the Samus in Super Metroid. As we know, Other M is a few years after Super Metroid, and Samus and Joey is a few years after that, and Fusion is a few years after that. Given Fusion Samus is, via the amps, probably millions or billions times stronger, I have a video on it, you can check it out. The fact that this Omega Metroid casually one-shots her confirms to me at least the Super Metroid is absolutely, without question, the being with the fastest growth rate and highest potential in all of Metroid. Well, that's all for today. You know how I leave you. Be safe, be wise, and please pray for true peace in space.